So this past Wednesday was Energy Day at the White House. I mean, Joe Biden has signed more executive orders in the first week of his presidency than most presidents sign forever. So for Energy Day, he basically crippled the oil and gas industry in the name of climate change, right? He declared a moratorium on new oil and gas leasing on public lands. He's already killed the Keystone Pipeline, which is it's something like 11,000 jobs directly, but there's other tens of thousands of other jobs affected. And the thing when it comes to climate change is our arguments are stupid. A lot of our political arguments are stupid. What you have is the left on one side saying we're all going to die in 8 days or in 12 years or whatever stupid thing they're saying. And we say oh, there's no such thing as pollution. You know, we are so extreme on the other side, we just react to what they're doing. So let's just take a bottom line of saying pollution is bad and we'd like to help pollution, and maybe pollution affects climate and maybe that's a bad thing. We don't know. Nobody knows anything about the future. They just pretend. It's all pretend. But let's just say pollution is bad. We do know. If you wanted to deal with pollution and you were a politician, here's something you might say, let's do a carbon tax. A carbon tax is fair because it affects everybody equally and it creates an incentive to bring down carbon emissions, right? Or, and this is something I've been saying since this show began, you might invest in storage, energy storage, new forms of batteries, essentially. Because the problem you have with things like, wind and solar is that they don't create enough energy, and you have to be able to, if you can store it for a longer period of time and more of it for a longer period of time, that could become a more useful way of gathering energy. Obviously, you'd increase nuclear energy. You'd stop being scared by movies and, stupid stories about nuclear explosions. And you'd realize that nuclear energy, if you do it right, is extraordinarily safe, extraordinarily clean, extraordinarily plentiful. Nobody is doing any of those things. They are doing zero of those things, okay? So you know that they're not serious about what they're talking about. They're not serious about climate change. They're not serious about their terror. They're not serious about anything. And once again, and what they really are serious about is giving subsidies to their friends, giving subsidies to the people who invest in them, people who make electric cars, people who make, solar panels, give them campaign donations, and they subsidize their business, even though a lot of this doesn't help at all. So this, once again, brings I won't call them serious people, I'll call them authentic people on the left, together with us, with conservatives. Michael Moore, of all people, I know it's raining frogs, but Michael Moore made a film recently called The Planet of the Humans, which explores the fact, and it's got a lot of nonsense in it, a lot of eat the rich nonsense in it, sure, but it explores the fact that a lot of these supposed attempts to control pollution are fake. So for instance, here's a scene where an environmentalist expert who believes very much in reducing carbon emissions goes and interviews a guy who makes hydrogen cars, clean burning hydrogen cars. Let's cut 12.
I'm in a strange position. I'm against our addiction to fossil fuels and have long been a fan of green energy. But everywhere I encountered green energy, it wasn't what it seemed.
This is like a perpetual energy battery.
And where do you get the hydrogen from?
The hydrogen, hydrogen is sourced from any hydrocarbon material. So you can get it from natural gas. You can get it from any petroleum or oil-based product.
Okay, so in other words, it's coming from oil. It's the same thing. He's getting the hydrogen from oil. So it's just one step away. Then the same guy goes and explores ethanol. It's cut 13.
Ethanol plants also seem to have a secret ingredient.
This is the most productive farmland in the world, and we're not that far west of the biggest coal mines in the world as well. So bring the two together and get an ethanol plant.
Great. So ethanol was reliant on two things: a giant fossil fuel-based industrial agricultural system to produce corn, and even more fossil fuels in the form of coal. All of this in the attempt to replace fossil fuels? It was enough to make my head explode.
Here's something else that will make your head explode. In 2011, 9 years ago, before Michael Moore made his film, another brilliant filmmaker named Andrew Klavan did a film in which he interviewed the Green Jobs Answer Man and came up with some of the same conclusions. This is cut 15. Building a windmill would be a green job.
Yes.
and making the materials you'd need, working at the factory. Very green. And transporting the windmill to the wind farm. Fantastically green. And putting the gas in the truck that transports the windmill. Grassy, greeny green. And drilling the oil that makes the gas for the truck. Another wonderful green job we can spend your money on. So Ted Cruz and AOC are on the same page about GameStop, and me and Michael Moore, I and Michael Moore, are on the same page about the waste of green jobs, that green jobs is nonsense. So what happens to Michael Moore? He makes this film, he tries to sell it to Netflix. Netflix won't buy it. He puts it up on YouTube. YouTube takes it off with just a flimsy excuse. He got it back up. It is now back up on YouTube, and he is upset because he suddenly found out that guess what? Social media and Twitter and Google and all these places, they shut you up if you offend the status quo that helps the elite. Here's Michael Moore complaining about social media censorship. Cut 14.
We are going to lose this battle. We are losing this battle for climate crisis and climate change, and we are sick about it. And so we wanted to start this conversation. They don't want to have the conversation. They want to shut us down. They want that screen to be black, so that you can't see what we're going to show you. If they think what we're showing you is not right, or we're wrong, or the things our opinion or analysis is wrong, we should have that debate. Why not have the debate? Why shut us down?
Why shut us down? Does that sound familiar? He sounds just like a conservative. He sounds just like us when they shut us down. So we hear things that we can agree on. Obviously, a lot of this stuff in Moore's film is ridiculous, but still, at least he's getting some of the facts finally right. He's finally getting some of the facts right. Now, there are disagreements. For instance, John Kerry points out, and this is just true, that we produce very, very little, about 10% maybe, of the carbon emissions, because the more sophisticated your technology is, the less carbon you produce. So we produce maybe 10% of the carbon emissions in the world. So anything we do is not going to have a big effect. And John Kerry, the new energy czar, Lurch, actually says this is cut 8.
President Biden is deeply committed, totally seized by this issue, as you can tell by this executive order, and by the initiative of getting back into Paris immediately. That's why he rejoined the Paris Agreement so quickly, because he knows it is urgent. He also knows that Paris alone is not enough, not when almost 90% of all of the planet's emissions, global emissions, come from outside of U.S. borders. We could go to zero tomorrow, and the problem isn't solved.
Now, John Kerry admits this, that really what we do doesn't matter much. But John Kerry disagrees because he got caught telling the truth. So afterwards, he corrected himself. It's cut 9.
First of all, I didn't say it wouldn't make any difference. I said it won't make the difference that will save us from the problem, because all of the world has to be at the table. The only point I was making, we need to reduce our emissions. We are the second largest emitter in the world. And if you put China and the United States together, that's almost 50% of all the emissions in the world. So yes, we have to do it. The point I was making is this is a global endeavor that all countries need to join in.
So I'm sure you could hear what crap that was if you put us and China together, because China is producing something like 40% of the emissions, of the coal emissions, because they don't care, because they just want to catch up. When people catch up, that's when they start to say, hey, some of our people are dying from the smoke and they have to wear masks in Beijing. That's when they start to worry about it. But before they catch up, they just want to make stuff, and you need oil, you need coal to do that. So they're putting people out of business. Right? They're directing subsidies to their friends. So in order to get the subsidies to their friends, they've got to put the oil people out of business. And remember, that satisfies the base, guys like George Soros and people like that, who are going to send them money because they're dealing with the horrible, horrible emergency of climate change. What about the people who are put out of work? They got to learn to code. Here's John Kerry telling people what to do when Joe Biden puts them out of work. This is cut 22.
The President of the United States has expressed in every comment he has made about climate the need to grow the new jobs that pay better, that are cleaner. You look at the consequences of black lung for a miner, for instance, and measure that against the fastest growing job in the United States before COVID was solar power technician. The same people can do those jobs. But the choice of doing the solar power one now is a better choice. So what President Biden wants to do is make sure those folks have better choices, that they have alternatives, that they can be the people who go to work to make the solar panels. They were making them here at home.
That's going to work. That's going to work great. That's going to work great. You know, especially if you live in Pennsylvania, if that's where your community is. It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. Solar panels cannot produce the energy we need. Wind cannot produce the energy we need. And those things, as per Michael Moore and everybody else who's ever studied it, those things require more fossil fuel use than just using fossil fuels. Why? Because wind, you have to back it up with fossil fuels, and you have to keep those engines running while the wind turbines are turning. Plus, they slaughter all the birds. This is an amazing, amazing fact that what we are seeing now is a takeover by the elites, which leads you to believe that what they hated so much about Donald Trump, and Donald Trump could be an obnoxious guy. We all know this. Even the people who love Donald Trump know he could be obnoxious. But what they really hated about him was that he was a threat to the elites. The populism is a threat to the elites, whether it's in the stock market, whether it is in energy, oil jobs, coal mining, all of these things. These are the ways people make livings who don't live in New York and LA. And when you hear, John Kerry, who sounds just like that guy on Gilligan's Island, Buffy, Buffy, go get a solar job. You know who's talking to you. You know who the Democrats especially now represent.